Hello and welcome to this live stream. I've looked very much forward to it. It's with a good friend and probably one of the most clever UiPath person I know. He'll be talking a lot about selectors. What is a selector? How can we use it? And how can we customize it? Mukesh Kala, hello and welcome to the stream.
Hi, Anders. Hi, everyone.
And
Thank you for inviting us.
a huge welcome, Mukesh. Thanks for taking your time. Looking forward for your show. And to the viewers out there, a huge welcome to you as well. You're bringing this stream alive. If you have any questions, we look very much forward to have them in the chat. I'll make sure I'll post every question for Mukesh. Mukesh runs a great YouTube channel as well, which I think you should check out. Of course, just watch this stream and then check it out afterwards. I will now post a link in the chat so you can go follow him here. And oh, that was the wrong one. Sorry, Mukesh. Now his channel is in the chat. You can just click the link and that will be taken to your channel. Mukesh, let's get started. What is a selector?
Okay, so thank you everyone for joining. Okay, so before we directly get into the technicals of selectors, I have some questions for all of you. Maybe you can use the chats and Anders can tell me here that what people are saying. Okay. So for example, I have a postman. As you can see my screen, I have a postman who has a letter. Now the postman has to deliver the letter to some person. The postman has a lot of letters. How does the postman know that which letter has to be delivered to which place? Or which parcel has to be delivered to which person? What is there in a letter that the postman is able to deliver the correct letter to the correct person? What is there?
So I'll be asking the viewers, and we have a little bit of delay because we have 20 seconds delay. So so to you viewers out there, how do a postman know where he should deliver his letter? Can you put that in the chat, and then we can make it a bit interactive. We'll see if there comes any. Otherwise, I'll ask Mukesh because I think I know if someone is not faster than me. When we have a lot of people joining, I'm not sure. I know almost all of them great friends of the chat. And that is Anju, Iona, Emra, Christian, Aman, Vinay, all joined and commented in the chat. They are looking very much forward. MD Haddad, he got an answer for you, Mukesh. He says that address and attention to person. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so every letter has something which is called address, right? So it would have the country, it would have the state, it would have the city, the street, and the house number. So because the letter has this address, the postman is able to correctly deliver the parcel or the letter to the correct person, right? Now, if I talk about UiPath, okay, UiPath is simple. So I tell UiPath that, see Mr. UiPath, or I would say robot, say Mr. Robot, I have a click activity, okay, and I want you to click somewhere. Right now the robot will ask me, hey Mukesh, I will so let's say just take an example of Notepad. I want to click on this Notepad, which is the file icon. Now I am telling UiPath you have to click on the screen. So UiPath says that indicate on screen. Now how would the robot know where should I click? If I go to the property, you would see that there is something which is called selector. First time I dragged and drop an activity, click activity, the selector is absolutely blank. There is no value here because the robot does not know that where should I go. He does not have the address. Now if I click indicate on screen and I just point it to this one, the file. Now what happens? The robot gets the complete address. That means now the robot has something that, yes, there is an app which is called Notepad. Its title would be untitled. There would be a menu bar and then you have to click on the file. So which means the robot has now got an address. So similarly, the same way a postman is able to deliver the address to the correct using the address, selector is something which UiPath use to correctly identify the elements on the screen.
And
Now,
Mukesh,
if you look at this, yeah.
And Mukesh, why don't we just use x point y coordinates on the screen? Why is this method that you are presenting here preferred?
Okay. If I use an x and y coordinates, what would happen if my screen size increases? Okay, if the resolution of the screen increases, it breaks. If it decreases, you break, right? You cannot work on x and y coordinates. So in the coming part, now I'm going to show you how exactly selectors are made and what are the benefits. Okay, so I hope now you understand that what exactly is the selector. As the postman is able to deliver the correct address to the correct location with the help of address. Similarly, UiPath is able to identify the elements on the screen with the help of selectors. Okay, now the same concept. Let me just go back to my PPT again. Okay, I'll just minimize this now. So now what is a selector? First of all, a selector is automatically generated whenever you use and interact with a GUI. When I say GUI, it means graphical user interface. Whatever you are looking on the screen, which you can do with the help of keyboard and the mouse, it's a GUI. So selectors are automatically generated. As you have seen, when I use the click activity, it was automatically generated. Now, a selector in UiPath Studio is an XML fragments. Okay, so don't get confused with this heavy words of XML attributes. I'll teach you everything in details so you would be very comfortable, right? But as of now, just understand that selector is the XML fragment. Okay, now if you are looking on the screen, if I just ask, okay, let me just, I think, yeah, this is coming from here. Yeah, okay. So if you are looking at this one, right, I have copy pasted this selector. Now looking at this selector, can you guess that what exactly it is? So as you can see, the first line says that yes, there is an application which is called Notepad. In the Notepad, there would be something called file, and then there would be something which is called control plus S. That means it is referring to the save button. So as a human, you are able to relate that what is this selector for. Now, if you go down to the selector, you would see the top first line of any selector is called the root node. Okay, which means that what is the application where you are going to automate the thing. And the last line is called the actual identifier. Now, what is an actual identifier? If I have to do a save, it's coming as control plus S, right? The name. If I have to do an open, it would be control plus O and the name would be open. So that means the last line of the selector is going to decide where the robot is going to perform the operation. So the thing which you have to mention, I need to remember, selectors are made up of XML fragments. The top node is called the root node and the last one is called the actual identifier. Okay, now when we talk about selectors, how does UiPath make it, right? So selectors are made up of nodes. Okay, whenever we talk about any of the websites or any of the user application, right, they are built one container other container, right? For example, when Microsoft would have decided the design the this notepad, they would have first created a large container of notepad, then a file, then other small containers, right? So user interfaces are a series of containers which are nested one another, right? So what UiPath does, it takes the all the nodes and it creates an selector. So this is the same thing which I am repeating. It is called, the last line is called the actual identifier and then the successive parent, right? So now this is a single line of the selector. In here, I told you that the selectors are made up of node. So as of now, if I count, there are 1, 2 and 3 nodes. The last one is called the actual identifier and the top one is the parent or the root node. Okay. Now, when you further go drill down into the nodes, you will see that each node is made up of tags and attributes. Now, what are tags and attributes? This thing is called the tag. Now, this tag can be of this type. If it is W and D, that means UiPath will know that yes, there is a Windows application. If it's HTML, it would know that yes, it's a web page. If it is CTRL, it would know that yes, it is a control, web control, Java. So this is a tag and these are the attributes. That means UiPath knows that yes, there is a Windows application whose name is Notepad. The exe is notepad.exe and these are the certain properties. right? So with the help of tags, attributes, and node, UiPath generates that entire HTML tree, entire stack trace, or I would say, right? So if you see here, if I come back to my UiPath Studio, you would see when I clicked here, it generated a selector for Notepad app, right? I am in my browser now. Okay. Let me just take one another click activity. Okay. And now let me just indicate it on the screen and let me just point it to some this run button maybe. I go here, edit the selector. You would see that now it is an HTML. That means you are trying to automate a browser whose title is try it browser, web control ID is button, and like that way, right? So this is about the basics of selectors, right? Now I hope you guys understand that what are selectors, how they are made. Yep.
Yeah, for sure. And we have lots of love for you, Mukesh, in the chat. Aman says it could be even more accurate. That was related to your postman example. That could be even more accurate if we use the GPS location. And
Yep.
Ioana says big
Yes.
love to you. And Anju says many RPA tools use screen positioning of elements, but it's not that reliable for different resolution screen, like you said. So UiPath introduced selectors, which is a great ability. Do you agree with Anju that the selector component of UiPath is really great?
Yeah, so selector components is really great, but I would say that whenever there is a user interface getting changed, right? So for example, tomorrow Microsoft decide that this new icon should not be here and it should be available as a button here, right? In the main menu. Then your automation requires a change because selectors are embedded inside the activity here, right? So now this is one of the problem I would say that the selector have. Now to resolve this, you have the other thing which is called the object repository where you deploy the selectors as a different solution. So the problem I have mentioned that when the UI changes, which is the user interface, the graphical user interface, you are automating changes, which means the source application which you are automating changes, that means it would require you to revalidate all the selectors. The solution to that problem would be to use the modern version, which is the object repository. I hope that answers.
For sure. So we make it more robust, and we can, in the object repository, we can just create this once, use it in multiple automation, all our projects, and then when it breaks, we can just change it one place that is in the object repository instead of in all our robots. So that's definitely something to go check out. Mukesh, it's a fantastic presentation you are in. I can personally say I very much enjoyed. I can see all the viewers enjoy it very, very much. And they have questions for you and comments. And Ravitaya says, hello, Anders and Mukesh. Hello, Ravitaya. And hello, all you viewers. If you want to help this channel and this stream, you can give it a thumbs up. That will improve the reach of this stream so we can get out tomorrow and have Mukesh's presentation out tomorrow. I posted his link a couple of times in the chat. I will not spam the chat, but I'll post a link to his YouTube channel a couple of times more during this session because I think you should go check that out after the session, of course. And back to you, Mukesh.
Okay, super. So whenever you are working with selectors, right? So these are the activities. Now selectors would come in picture every time you are doing something with the UI thing. When I say UI, this is a browser. I need to click, I need to type, I need to select this checkbox. All these places you would have selectors. Now, as a developer, how would you know that I am using the selectors, right? So if you go to your project, you would have something which is called UiPath.UI automation activities. Okay, so this is the package which is responsible for giving you all the activities and this guy which is called the UI Explorer. Okay, now if you are working with the selector and listening selectors for the first time, this is the tool you should explore. I would be briefly covering this tool, but you can again go and explore more about this tool. Okay, so the first thing to work with any UI automation, you need to have this package in the dependencies, UiPath.UI automation. If it is not available, you simply have to go here, go to the manage dependencies, manage, and you just have to add it from the all packages and you should be able to get it. Okay, now.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, now let's talk about this guy. This is UI Explorer. So what is this UI Explorer? It has got multiple things, okay, but the primary advantage which I can show you now is that it has multiple widget. Let it just fire up. Okay, so this is a standalone tool. You do not need to have the UiPath Studio installed for this one. You can directly install it as a standalone also. So for example, tomorrow you go to some client and you want to know whether UiPath is able to generate the selectors or not, right? You can easily open a UI Explorer, you can indicate the element and you can know that what selector it is giving, right? So for example, when I used a click file button from UiPath Studio, it automatically generated a selector for me. That means it's automatically generated an address or the GPS location as someone's saying, right? But this UiPath has generated as per its intelligence. Now every time it won't work for you because this is what UiPath thinks is best, right? But what is the benefit of using UI Explorer? Let me show you. I pointed, go here. You can see that there is the same button which says indicate element. I indicate element and now let me just point it to the same file button. Okay. Now, if you see here, this was the selector which UiPath has given me in the UiPath Studio, right? But now in the UI Explorer, I have this complete trace that how the application was built, right? Which means that you can see here that there is a notepad, there is a menu bar. Inside the menu bar, you have this file, edit, all of this pop-up menu, right? All of these items, control S, right? So it has given you the entire trace of the application, right? This is called the visual tree. The other important property is of this UI Explorer, it gives you this property explorer. And trust me, this is one thing which you are going to mostly use in the UI automation. I will show you some of the scenarios that how do you use property explorer. What are the other things? You can always select some of the things, right? So if you feel that this selector is not good enough, you can always add items or you can remove the items from here, right? So a question to all the viewers here. If this is a selector and if I point say that yes, this is an address. So at a time, how many elements should be identified on the screen?
Can
One,
you
two, three, four.
can you repeat that question again? I think I missed it, Mukesh. I'm sure it was.
Okay. Sorry. So there is a selector which is available on the screen, right? So at a time, if I tell UiPath, okay, you go and find the elements on the screen with this selector. So how many elements should UiPath expect to work correctly? One selector should correspond to, okay, I'll answer that. I think I just messed up the question. One selector
No.
at a particular time should only be accessing or having validation to only one element. That is same like having a postman who is having a letter. So when the postman is going to the address, he should not find two person with the same name, right? Then he would get confused. Okay, whom to deliver? So let's say today I send a good parcel to Anders and now there are two Anders with the same name, same face. How would the postman know whom to deliver, right? So at a time, a selector should only identify a single element on the screen. If it is identifying more than one, that means your selector is not good enough, right? If your selector is identifying two elements on the screen, that means your selector is not good. Now, what do I mean by a single element, right? So for example, let me go to the again notepad. I have created this selectors, indicate element, and let me just point it to this format, right? Now I want to know if I run this automation, where would UiPath click? So I do not have to necessarily every time run the process. Rather, what I can do is I can come here and I can use this button which says highlight. So if I just go here and click on this highlight button, it says that, see, you can see the red box here, which means that if I run this automation with this selector and if I use a click activity, that means this selector is going to click on this button. If it looks good, you can go ahead, right? Now let's say let's try to do something, right? I go here and I just save this notepad. Let me just do a save as. I will point it to my desktop and I will just save something. Now, if you see here, this selector was looking for an app of notepad.exe and was expecting a title of untitled notepad. But what happened? I just changed the name of the notepad here, right? Now it is SA something, right? It is not matching this. The address has changed. Now, if I just click on the validate, it says that no, Mr. Mukesh, your address is wrong because the title is not matching, right? So the title is not matching. That's why I am not able to identify, and it has given me this cross, right? Which brings me to the next button, which is called the validate. So the validate will tell you whatever selector you have made is correct or not. You do not have to every time run the automation. You can use UI Explorer to validate the selector, indicate, and the best part is the repair, right? So let me just do a quick copy paste of this selector. Okay, let me just copy this selector in this file only. Okay, now if you see, this is my old selector. If I just use the button which says repair, and now I am telling UiPath that please repair this selector. So repair means you have to again point it to the same element. Now UiPath has repaired the selector, and if I see the validate button, it is green, right? See, and now it is able to validate. Now if I just copy paste this new selector and paste it below this, what do you notice? UiPath has automatically, this two lines are exactly the same. UiPath identified that yes, there was a change in the file name, so it placed a star mark here.
So it automatically fixed our. So it fixed our selector. You could have done this for yourself, but UiPath automatically fixed it for you. Is that correctly understood?
Yes, yes. Now what is this star? This star is nothing but a wildcard. Okay, so whenever you are learning UiPath, okay, about selectors, you would have two wildcards. One would be the question mark and the other would be star. So the question mark would replace a single character. Okay, it would replace a single character, whereas the star mark would replace 0 or more characters. So what has happened here? The previous one was, let me just go do a control Z. Okay, so UiPath just replace this with a star mark. Okay, now let me show you one more interesting thing. The title of the notepad is, let me just do, and I save it to ABCD, and I click save, right? So now the title of the notepad is abcd.txt. If I go here and instead of the star, if I just type here ABCD and if I click validate, it says that no, I'm still not able to validate, right? Why so? Because it says abcd.txt, right? So this you have to do every time, right? So a better way, you can use the highlight option, sorry, the repair option. UiPath does it automatically for you, right? So now if I have placed ABCD, it works, right? Tomorrow, I am not sure. The business says that now I don't want it to be ABCD. I want it to be ABCDEFG. But now they say ABCD is constant. So how do you use wildcard? So I say, just put a star mark here. I say that I want to have a notepad whose title is ABCD, then followed by a star, which means that I don't bother whatever comes after ABCD, it should work for me. Or whatever comes before ABCD should work for me. Let me click on validate. And yes, it works, right? So two wildcards, one is question mark and one is the star mark. Okay.
I have some quick questions, Mukesh, while we're here. I must say I enjoy your presentation a lot. So, but a few quick questions from me and the viewers. First of all, what will happen if we have two notepads open with ABCD inside them? Will that be the problem that you referred to before?
Okay, so if you have the two notepad with the same name open, right? Now,
or
it
just
would work.
Yeah, sorry, or just with ABCD. Yeah, sorry, just go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, it would work on the topmost.
Okay. So that
now, go ahead, Andres. So I think there was a question, yeah?
Yeah, we have a few more questions. It looks like, or not looks like, people are definitely enjoying your show here. Nivet says hello all. Hello Nivet, nice to see you here. And I have some questions, and I don't expect you to know the answer, so simply just the ones you can answer, do those, and the other ones we will skip for a more specific answer. But Carlos, hello Carlos, says, I have a problem with selectors. The page periodically changes IDs. By AA name, it does not match. It has a 97% match. The name is correct, copied directly from the page code. The rest of the selectors are not unique and are not repeated in other parts of the page. Any solution?
One solution would be again to use the wildcards. The other solution that when you talk about selectors, right, there are advanced selectors where you can use the fuzzy logic, the fuzzy selector, you can use the regex based selector also. Right.
Cool.
So those are the advanced selectors which you can also include in the selector tab. You can use fuzzy, you can use the regex based selector. So based on the patterns, you can actually include the regular expression also in the selectors. How do you do it? You just have to come here and include your regex here for the element which is varying.
Cool. And Carlos, that was an answer to you from Mukesh. I think it's amazing that we can ask such an expert and a UiPath most valuable professional here live about the things he's good at. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. That will help us a lot. And Mukesh, I have one more question for you before we continue to your amazing show. Ioana, a good friend of the show, welcome to the show, says, what can I do with selectors that are validating a notification box, even if I can't see the notification? Parentheses, its request is always called when the web page is opened. Do you understand the question, Mukesh?
Yep. So there is some element on the screen which is validated, right? It said, yes, it is valid. But when you go, it is not there, right? What do you do then?
Exactly.
That is where your advanced concept of property explorer comes in, which is what next is coming on this show. Okay?
So Ioana, make sure you stay tuned. Mukesh will come
Yeah.
right back to that question in the Property Explorer. Mukesh, back to you. I will keep a close eye on the chat. So people, please let all the great questions and comments. If you're just enjoying the show, let us know in the chat. That means a lot to us. Back to you, Mukesh.
Thank you, Anders. Okay, so this is something which this this selector window does. You can do a repair. You can re-indicate the element. You can indicate the anchors, right? And then there is one good option here, which is called the UI framework, right? So for example, if you are doing an automation, which is on the very old technologies, okay, very legacy technologies, and the selectors are not working, that time you can actually come to UI framework and switch it to the active accessibility. Okay. If in case you are doing something very newer or very newer version, which the default one is not working, then you can switch to UI automation and then you can re-indicate and recreate the selector. So these two options are available. Okay. But 99% of the times your default one would work. You have to only switch if it is default one is not working for you, right? So that option is available in here, right? Active accessibility and UI automation. Okay, now what else we have here, right? So for example, if I want to today, I want to create a selector for the scroll bar. Okay, I want to create a selector for, let's say, the help. I do not want to go again to UiPath and re-indicate the element. Rather, I have the entire visual tree with me. I just have to right click here and set as target element. Okay, I think. Okay, so why that is coming? Because the element is not valid, right? We don't have the notepad here. So it says that where should I go, right? So I just go and indicate element. Let me again point it to this one. Okay, so I have pointed to the file button and you can see that it is file. Now tomorrow I want to create an selector for the help button. Let's say for this guy. I do not want to go and again recreate the selector. Rather, I can come into this guy and just right click here, set as target element. And you can see that this selector has now been accommodated to help the help one, right? So now this one is for the help. You can change it, right? So all this option, you can select an anchor here. You can select the target element here. You can remove the parent, right? So all these are the successive parents, the nodes. This is the parent node. This is the actual identifier and this one. If you think that this is not required, remove it. If you think it's required, remove it. If you want to add more, you can just add it here, right? So that is how this guy, this selector editor works, right? Now coming to the next part, what is the use of this property explorer and why should I worry about, right? Okay, so let me just open a new tab and let's go to Amazon maybe. Yeah.
And
Okay.
Mukesh, while we load the Amazon site, if we can find you on your YouTube channel, how can we follow you on the social media? If you think what you do here is cool, you might the other things you do might be cool as well. So where are you?
I am on LinkedIn. You can find me on Twitter. I have an Instagram page as well, which is called UiPath Tutorials, right? So yes, all those
Cool,
places you can find me.
cool. Thank you, Mukesh. And we have
Okay, so I
Amazon
am just, yeah,
working.
okay. So yeah, I have this, let's say this is a random page I have just opened. Okay. So let's say today I have a client, okay, and he tells me that I want to extract that how many rating this Maggie 2 minute instant noodle have, right? So as a human, if you see, it says 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 point some stars, right? But now if I have to create a report that, okay, Maggie noodles price is 12 rupees, 725, then what is the rating? But this rating is in stars, right? Let's try to get this number and see what exactly. So how do you think Amazon would be doing it? In the back end, Amazon would have a database. I would say, I would think that yes, there would be a database where those numbers would be stored. And then there is some, UI engine, which is converting that number to the stars. Now, as an automation engineer, my task is to read that number. So that is where your property explorer will come in picture. How do I use it? Again, the same concept. I go to property explorer. I say indicate element. Okay. Now just indicate it on the stars. Okay. I indicated on the stars. Now if I use a click activity, it would work there. Now if you will see, UiPath, UI Explorer has generated this entire HTML trace for me, which say that yes, there is an HTML page, this, and this. Now if you see here, in the property explorer, I can get more details which is not visible on the selector. The first thing is absolutely the AName, which is 4.5 out of 5 stars, right? I can see that this is an outer text. This is the process ID, the relative text and all, right? And I can see the URL. Now let's say from a selector, how do I use this? So I have got all these details. I can see that in the selector, I can only use this selector to type and print. But now my requirement is I want to get the value out of the selectors. I want to get this AA name. I want to get this, let's say this URL. How do I get it? So that is where your property explorer would be used. In the property explorer, you can see that which value, which attribute is having the value which you are interested, right? I am interested in 4.5 and I can see that value is available in the outer text, in the inner text, in the inner HTML as well, right? But how do I get this value in UiPath? Let me show it to you quickly, right? So I just go and get rid of this guy. Okay. Now what I am interested, as I told you, selectors are made up of tags and attributes, right? So if I just ask you, this is the tag and this is the attribute. So 4.5 something is the attribute. I want to get the attribute value now. So that's where if I just type here attribute, you would see that I have got some more interesting activities here. So the first activity which I want to show is attributes, UI automation, element, attribute, and get attribute. Drag and drop it here. Now get attribute is asking me indicate the element on the screen. Okay, let me indicate it again on the screen. So we were looking at this guy. Okay, now when I click on it, get attribute will say that which attribute you want to use. But how would I know which attribute stores what value? For that, I would require this guy, right? Here I can see that my value is available in ANM, my value is available in inner HTML, right? So I can go back to my UiPath Studio here. In this one, I can say inner text, right? I hope that inner text was here. Let's quickly check. Yes, inner text is having this value. Okay, so where do you want to save it? I just hit Control+K and I say str underscore rating. The beauty of UiPath, it will automatically create a variable for me. Okay, now let us try to just use a write line activity. The write line activity will just allow us to print that value. Okay, I go here and I just say whatever variable I created, I just save this, go here and run the file. Now what is happening? I am instructing UiPath to go to this browser, from the selector, get me the attribute value and print that attribute value. Okay, so my robot is running. If I go to the output, I can see that 4.5 out of 5 stars. Right now, coming to the question which somebody has asked me, the element is not visible on the screen, but still the selector is valid. Now, what you have to do is when the selector is valid, okay, the selector would be always valid, right? Every selector has something which is called visibility. Okay, so see, there is which is called the visibility. Somewhere it would be relative visibility or something related to the visibility. You have to point to the element when it is, say, visible on the screen. Just take a note of this value and this value. You would notice when the element is not visible, this changes to false and this changes to 0. That means during my automation, before doing any operation with that thing, I would just go here and I would select the relative visibility or the visibility for that matter. I would store that item in some variable. Then I will check if that value is false. That means it is not visible, which means it is not visible on the screen. The selector is valid, but the visibility is false, right? So that way you can control it. I hope that answers.
Iona, I think this was a good explanation. Do you agree? Let us know in the chat if that covers what you actually asked for. I think it's really great. Thank you, Mukesh. I'll pass on a few other comments and questions for you.
Yep.
It says, keep up the good work. More power to you. Ayit says, thank you for sharing so much knowledge. Learning a lot from you guys. Keep up the good work. And it says again, great to see you both at the same platform. Thank you, Thank you, Ayit. Nice to see all such nice comments. And we have some more questions. If I miss one, it's not by purpose, but it's quite hard to see all because there's a lot of great questions. Just post it again if I somehow miss one. We had the Iona. We have Aaron. Imagine if you have one character to change in your selector. Will there be any difference if you use the asterisk, that is the star, instead of the question mark?
Okay, so I can quickly answer that. As I told that this one and this one, right? So I have this string. Okay. If I just use this one, this works. Okay. And sorry, my bad. Control C. And here, if I use this one, this also works, right? This also works and this also works. Cool. Now, what would be the difference? And when should I use what, right? So this was my actual string. And for question mark, I have used this, right? Now, which one should I have used? If I want to make it strict that yes, it should only work with Anders, then you should use this. But if you are sure that yes, in future it might come as something else, then you should go and use this one. But for a single character, both would work. But this one will restrict you to use only a single character. For this one, if something like this comes, this would fail, right? So it will entirely depends on your requirement that how do you see it.
Cool. Aaron, thanks for the great question. I hope this answered everything. Let us know in the chat. And Mukesh will keep on. Navir, hello and welcome. Navir says how to use visual tree and identify the respective element.
Okay, so in the visual tree, that's a good question, I would say. In the visual tree, you have this button which says enable highlighting, right? So if I click on this button, okay, you can see whichever element now I select from the visual tree, right? It would get highlighted. So body. Okay, so let me go here. Okay, so because I have opened the Amazon page, so it would be highlighting the Amazon. So let me just quickly point it to the Notepad so it's a bit simpler here. And then, yep. Now if you can see, this is pointing to the file. Where is the format? This is the format, right? See, and how do I do that? By using this button, which says enable highlighting. So whenever I'm scrolling, where is the view button? Just click on this. This is the view button. Do you want to set it to the main element? Yes. Set as target element. change to view.
And what when we set a target element, you told us that before, but can you repeat what you're doing here when you set a target element?
Okay, so when I say set as target element, that means now whichever selector, so this is the final output, which means that now if I just copy paste this selector anywhere in the type into or in the click activity, in the double click, in the checkbox, UiPath is going to perform the operation in this. So for example, you are writing an automation where you have to first click on file, edit, format, view, all the buttons one by one. You don't want to use drag and drop 5 click activities and then every time go and indicate element. I already have the entire visual tree with me. All I can do is just go here, right click, set as target element, copy paste, right click, set as target element. This is for edit button selector, right?
Cool.
So you don't have to redo all the efforts again and again.
That's cool, Mukesh. Thank you. And that was an answer to you, Navir. Let us know in the chat if that is enough. Thank you, Mukesh, for being here, and thank you for giving us such nice learning. I have a little complaint that I, for somehow, is disguising a bit of Mukesh's screen with the with my overlay up here in the left corner. The note taken. I cannot fix it now, but I will try to. If Mukesh used some of the buttons in the left corner, I will tell you what's going on, or I will ask Mukesh to repeat it. So yeah, that was a little bit, I'll remember that for the next one. Then Navir asks again, what are some attributes that will make the selector stabilized and the attributes that needs to be avoided?
Yeah, okay. Okay, so I was going to come to this part. So let us
Mukesh, and let's say to Navir, we will take that question when Mukesh get there. He will get there in a few minutes. So stay tuned here. Yes. And if you like what you see, give the stream a thumbs up. Thank you everyone for being here. It's a huge pleasure to have such a nice audience. I think I can see there's really nice comments and questions. I'll let Mukesh talk once more, and then I will interrupt him at some point with all your great questions and comments. Keep them coming. I promise we will answer each one of these questions. Back to you, Mukesh.
Okay, so I'm now going to introduce. So just now we have seen one activity which was called get attribute, right? Which you might have worked or which you might not have worked, right? So the activity which we have used was get attribute. I just want to show you that what are the other options or activities which are available in UiPath, which you might be aware of, which you might not be aware of, how to use them and when to use them, right? So one of the other activity which is available is called the, if I just go here, I can see that wait. Okay, wait attribute is there. Okay, so for example, let me go to this page. I have just created this page before the stream. Okay, if I just go here, you can see that this is a simple HTML and I have a checkbox which says this one, right? So now let's say you are writing an attended automation. Okay, so we have automation categories: attended, unattended automation. Attended automation is something where it requires a human intervention. You require a human to perform certain actions, right? Now let's say you are writing an automation and you want the user to click on this button. Till the time user click on this button, you don't want the automation to proceed. That means I want to wait for the attribute to change. Now if what I'm going to show you that how exactly using the use of property explorer, UI explorer, and this one you can accomplish this task. Let me just repeat what is the task. I am creating an attended automation. Okay, my job is to just ensure that the user come here and clicks on this button. I have to just wait for that time. How can I do that? So first and the foremost, whenever we are using selectors, I go to UI explorer, I go indicate an element and point it to the checkbox. Okay, I have got some selector from UiPath that this is the parent element and this one, right? If I go to the property explorer now, you notice that the there would be something which is called checked, right? If you see the checked value is 0. Is the selector valid? If I just click on highlight, it's correctly identifying the red, right? But what happens if you just notice the checked value as of now is 0? Okay, that means it is not checked. If I just go and click on this one, okay, now if I go back here, I click on validate, it is still valid, right? If I go and indicate again, to this point again. Now you would see the checked value is 1. The selector is exactly the same, but the property explorer is changing. Now, how I can actually use this value to make sure that the this checkbox is checked? Okay, so let me go back to the UI Explorer. Sorry, UiPath Studio. Now I want to wait for the attribute value. I have seen here the value which is changing is this one, checked. Now for any activity in UiPath, if you are not sure what is the input, what is the output, just click on the activity, go to the properties, and you would see that the input for this activity is attribute, attribute value, or the element, right? But as of now, I do not have anything. I do not have the attribute. I do not have this thing, but I can definitely get an element, right? So UiPath has this interesting activity, which is called find element. So now you would see that how using multiple activities, we can accomplish multiple different things, right? I use an activity which is called find element. Now, what does find element do? It will go to the screen, it will find the element, and it will give you the element object, which is nothing but the UI element object. Now, as we are doing the UI automation, all of the elements are called UI element. So find element, I say go to the screen and you give me the value for this guy. Now find element, if I go to the properties, you would see the selector is exactly the same what we were looking at this one. If I'm not satisfied, I can actually use more attributes from here, and then I can copy paste this selector again to this one. Okay, but for me this looks good. I hit OK. Now find element has given me an element. Now what is the output of find element? If I just hover, it says that you have to create an element of UI element, but I don't know how do I create a variable here. Easy way, just go here in the properties, hit Control plus K, that is the shortcut, and I just create a checkbox. Excuse me for the spelling, right? I just created any variable for checkbox. I go to the variables. Beauty of UiPath, the variable is automatically created with the correct data type. Okay, now my input is the checkbox, right? Find element, find that element. I have got the checkbox. Now in the wait attribute, if you go here in the input, it is asking for the element. Now what do I pass here? I just pass the checkbox variable. I got the input. Now which attribute you want it to get changed, right? I have checked in the UI Explorer that the value which is changing is, which is the attribute. Let me go back again here, indicate an element and point it to this one. Okay, so the element is checked, right? CHECKED. So if you go back here in the attribute, I am not finding the value, right? Oh, okay, it's here. In case if UI Explorer is able to get the value and you are not able to get the value here, you are happy to type the value. Okay, this is a plain text box which is expecting a string value, so you can always type the value in the double quotes, so you don't have to worry if it is not coming in the drop down. Okay, now when I say for the wait attribute, right, I can just store it in a value, let's say output, I would say, right? Now, okay, sorry, my bad. When I say for the checked one, what is the value you want it to check? I want to check till the time it goes to 1. That's it. Now what would happen? UiPath will find this element. Till the time it value get checked to 1, it will keep the automation here. Once it is checked, I just want to have a message box. Okay, and in the message box I say checked. Just go here, save this, go back here and check this guy. Go back to UiPath and say run the file.
Mukesh, I got
Okay.
quite a question for you. Am I the only one
Yep.
that's still searching for some of the old activities that before UiPath got updated, they had some different names, and I still cannot get my head around all the new nice activities?
Okay, so there are two set of activities. Okay, that thank you, Andres, for bringing that question. I would say, right, there are two set of activities which UiPath has, which is one is called the traditional and one is called the modern activities. Now, a lot of time people say that, hey, I'm not able to get this. This your UiPath Studio looks different. My looks different. There are set of activity change. Why is that happening? Because as of now, what you are looking on the screen is the classic version of activities. If you want to use a modern version, you just have to go to homes, in the settings, in the, I would say in
Design.
the
Design.
design, you
Yeah.
have this option, use modern folder for new projects. This guy. That gives you the newer set of activities. Does that answer, Anders?
Yes, please. That was really good, Mukesh. And I will bring you some questions so you can have a glass
Yep,
of
yep.
water, and then I will see. Iona and Navia, you answered those their questions perfectly, Mukesh. Thank you. Christian learned a lot by the visibility. That was a blind spot for him. Gilau says just joined, so might have missed a question. But what is the benefit of this approach versus element exist?
Which approach?
I
Sorry.
think it goes to the find element and then the weight attribute, but I'm not 100% sure. So we will get up. Can you update in the chat if we
Yep.
not interpreting your question correct? Aaron says you answered it, and thank you very much, Mukesh. Ulla says, can we modify data scrapings selected items selectors?
Yes, we can. We can.
Cool.
For any data scraping, you have the selectors generated. Again, the same thing. It would be available in the selector properties. You just open and you can edit it here. You can edit the selectors. Yep.
That was yes. And then Ayit says, I had this question. How to use selectors in dropdowns and how to pass condition to select the values of dropdowns based on certain conditions.
Okay, yeah, that is also coming. So that is the next activity which I was going to tell, right?
The viewers
Okay,
are just quick and want to know everything that you prepared for them, Mukesh. So that is a good one. Looking forward for that. We will let you hang like a couple of minutes at it, then Mukesh will get back to that. And thanks to all of you. Yes, so Bonanza says, great session. Keep it up. Thank you for joining. And if you're having a good time here, let us know in the chat. That's always nice to see. And now you're generating a fake name for yourself, or what is happening?
Yeah, so I'm just preparing for the next use case, whatever I'm going to present. Okay, so next activity. Let's go to the next activity. I hope wait element is clear. Wait element is simply waiting for the action to happen on the screen, mostly used in the attended automation. Now, when I'm talking about attended automation, let's say you are doing an attended automation on some screen or on some browser, and you want to guide the user. Okay, so let's say I want to guide the user that you have to click on this button in the submit button. But now my user, how would I guide an attended user that what he needs to do? If he's an old user, he would know that yes, I have to click on this button. But how would I guide a new user who is coming, right? Let's say this is on web. Okay, so UiPath has got this pretty interesting activity which is called set web attribute. Absolutely simple activity. Just indicate the element on the screen. Okay, which is the element? Show checkboxes. Now, before using any attribute activity, that is why property explorer is important. I don't know that what is the value where, right? So for that, I just indicate element, again pointed to the same element. Now in the left side, I can see that this value, whatever I am interested, is coming in the AA name. Okay, so and it is coming in the inner HTML, in the inner text. So that is why I require the property explorer. Now, if I go back to my automation here, in the set web attribute, now I know that this value is coming in the inner HTML. Okay, now what is the value? I would say subscribe to Anders, right? So now if I just go here and this is my automation, let's say this is an attended automation where I want to guide the user. When I run this automation, just go here and say run the file. Okay, let us just wait for the automation to fire up. It will actually go, and if you will see now, it will has simply changed the text to subscribe to Anders, right? So that means now I'm able to guide the user that, hey, now you have to click on this button, you have to do this. How do I do that? Using the set web attribute. Okay, now don't think that you have changed the source code, it is just temporary. Okay. So that is just to guide the users in the attended scenario. So that was an activity which is called set web attribute.
So you're
Okay.
just temporarily changing some of the web
Yes.
elements here.
Yeah. So to guide the user that yes, what he has to do next, right? It is same way you do using the F12, right? You press the F12 and then you change the elements on the browser. That is the same way you do with the help of UiPath. Okay. Okay. So the last item for today's session, which is for the drop down and has many questions, right? So let's say I have this fake name generator. I have this all the countries which are available. I want to get all these value and I want to write certain condition here. Now, if you see, I am dealing with selectors, right? All the elements are UI elements, right? All these elements. So this is one UI element, this is the second, this is the third. So let's say I am writing an automation where I have to select all these value one by one. First, I have to click Austria, then I have to click Belgium, then I have to click Canada and like this and so forth for all these items, right? I cannot create individual selectors. For that, UiPath has got this pretty interesting activity. Let me just delete this here, clear my canvas, and I will take an activity which is called find children. So find children is an activity, right? Okay, one more thing about UiPath. For any of the activity which you want to know more about activity or anywhere on UiPath, you just right click on the help. It will directly navigate you to the official documentation docs.uipath.com and it will directly open the page for you. So you don't have to search. So as you can see, I just right click here, find children. This allow you to retrieve the collection of children. And these are the properties, some examples, right? So all you have to do is just
This is
right
great.
click and it will open.
I
Yeah.
even I often right click on the activities. Of course, I even I didn't know that you could right click and get help. So that is amazing, because that will definitely help a lot of the students out there and to get instant help
Yeah.
in the documentation. So thanks a lot for showing that. I wasn't aware of that.
No problem. Yeah. When I noticed this one, I also shocked. Okay, this is something pretty cool. Okay. So find children, right? What does find children do? It find you the all the elements of that element. Okay. So let me just indicate it on the screen. Okay. And let's point it to the drop down. This guy. Now find children will give you output in form of, if you see here, I enumerable of UI element. Now what is I enumerable? You can treat as enumerable as something which is enumeration, which is a list. So you would get a list of UI elements. I am not sure that what exactly it is going. So let me go here, hit Control plus K, that is, and I just create a variables called children's. And what would happen? It will create a variable exactly the same type, I enumerable of UI element. Now let me just drag and drop a right line activity here. Okay, because I want to see what exactly this guy is giving, right? I don't know that what exactly is coming in this variable. How do I do it? Go here, put a breakpoint. That means I'm running the automation in a debug mode. I want to check when I click on find element, what is the output UiPath is giving me, right? So whenever you run it here, you just have to go to the locals. You would have something here, locals. Go to your variable, which is called children's. This is what we created. You would see a small pencil icon here, and you can just Control A, Control C, right? Let me just open a Notepad plus plus, right? And hit Control plus N, Control plus V. Okay. So let me just change the language here to XML. Okay. So this is the output which I am getting when I use a uh, find children, right? So if you see, UiPath has got me 31 UI elements. This is the first UI element. Okay, and this is the first UI element. This is the second UI element, right? So I am getting all these UI elements one by one. Now what I am interested? I am interested in knowing the value of the country, right? So if you see, all the countries are coming in the AA name. If I just double click on the AA name, you can see that I am getting the first country here. A name is equal to Austria. The second country is here. The third country is here. The fourth country is here. But all these values are nested inside the UI element like this. First UI element, the second UI element, the third UI element, like this, right? So now if I just double click again on the A name, you can see that these are all the values which are coming. Now my task is to get all these values one by one so that I can use it in the click activity or any other condition, right? Now, what is this thing, right? So this is a enumerable, which means this is a list, which means I would have to loop the list one by one. Now, this is where a little bit of programming knowledge would be required. Okay. To loop the list, to loop through a collection, we require something which is called for each. Okay. So if I just go here and say for each, right? So now how do you understand VB and all? So Andres has suggested some of the books that which you should refer for VB. Andres, you can again tell the people the links, whichever you have suggested. That was pretty good. That helped me as well. So for each item, now what is the list, right? So the list is this children's, right? Now all these UI elements are coming one by one. First this, the second this, the third this. Now, what do I want from this UI elements? I want this value which is called a name. So I want to get the attribute. Okay. Now, what is the item? If I go to the properties, you will see that as of now, it says that I am of the type object, but this is not of the type object. How do I know what is the type? You just go to variables. You will see that inside the enumerable, it is the type of UI element. Simple. Just go here in the properties, in the object, just change it to UI element. That means I am telling UiPath that in the for each, I am using the UiPath.core.UI element. Okay, this is, and how do I know this is UI element? This is how I know this is UI element, right? UiPath.core.UI element. The same thing you have to select in the property panel here, like this. Okay, now it's absolutely simple. Now we have done the hard lifting. We have got all the children's are available in the list, iterating all the children's one by one, then getting the value of the attribute. Now what is the attribute which I require? I require the A name. Just copy this A name from here, get the attribute. What is the attribute? The attribute is A name. Okay, now which attribute, right? Now it would require an element. So it would see here in the input, the element would be nothing but the item, right? The list, whichever you are preparing, this list has got 31 items. Those 31 items are getting looped one by one. First item, second item, third item. Go to the get attribute, get the attribute from the item where the attribute name is a name, get it and store it in a variable called country. UiPath will automatically create a variable for me, COUN, it would have created of type string. Now what is the next thing? As of now, let's just print those value in a message box. Right now I can write condition here that if the country is India, do this. If the country is something else, do this, right? Now let's try to save this, go here and run the file.
Cool.
Now let's see what happens. Okay, I am getting all the country names one by one from the dropdown.
This will be a long video. We will take each country before we're done here.
Yes, I can stop it here.
No, just kidding. And that is really great. And that this was what got asked about, that how can you get elements in a drop down, and this is exactly like you want to do. So great answer, Mukesh. And we will take some few more questions before we get back to Mukesh's nice presentation. And just a quick query, that is from Aman. Thank you, Aman. Just a quick query. If we need to automate one element which is down below in the page application, do we need to progress for scroll bar or just need to automate the required element?
No, you do not need to automate over the scroll bar. Okay, so let me quickly show it to you. For example, if I want to click on this button, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how does UiPath identify, right? That was the basic. So we want to identify with the help of the selectors, right? So selectors would work even if you are on the top half, even if it is collapsed, even if it is minimized. Okay. So it would work anywhere. You don't have to necessarily scroll down. You just have to use the click activity, use this selector, and it will automatically click on that place, even if it is minimized, right? What it cannot do, if it is closed, then definitely it cannot find that element. It will give you an error. But if it is visible, if it is available on the screen, I would say the selector is valid. So it should be able to click even if it is on the top, minimized, maximized, in any form, right? So that is the beauty of selector. So even if I today maximize this notepad, still it would be able to click, because it is not working on the positions. It is working on the internal structure of the application.
That's a cool answer. I hope that answered to you, Aman. Nice, Mukesh. And Pritam says, hi, Mukesh. Maybe you know him. Or and Harsh says, thank you for the books. That's great. Mukesh, I think we got one more technical question, and then we got a question to the person, Mukesh. I'll bring on the technical question first, and then we'll have the question for you. So how to know when to use fuzzy selector?
Okay. How do you know when to use fuzzy selectors? Nice questions. Okay. So for example, okay, this is the number which I am expecting. Sometimes it might be 77. Then sometime it might be 5, then 777. Sometime it might be 45 and 778. Something like this, right? So if you see, these three are having a fuzzy matching, right? So whenever you write a fuzzy logic, you have a number which you have to decide, right? So fuzzy would be used when you are not sure what might come here. So fuzzy means yes, if it is matching. So if I just ask you, is this matching somewhere? You would say yes, it is somewhat matching. Now what is that somewhat? If I just do it like this, 1, 2, and is it matching somewhat? You would say no, these two are not matching. These two are matching. Yes, I can definitely use the selector, but if I use a question mark, it will only replace one. If I use a star, it will replace everything. But if I want to compare this, that is the place where I'm not sure whether this would be 7, whether this would be 8, whether this would be 4, 7. That is the place you would use the fuzzy one, right? So it's a fuzzy matching. Now again, any topic which you want to understand, you can always go here and say fuzzy selector UiPath. Docs.uipath.com has pretty good explanation of everything, right? So feel free to explore the fuzzy selector from docs.uipath.com.
Cool. And then Ayana says, how old is Mukesh? We're not sure he will answer that, but we will try to. How old is Mukesh, and for how long have he, and since how long had he started learning RPA? Will you answer those two questions, Mukesh?
Okay, so I have a total of 8 years of experience. Out of those, starting 2 years are in .NET. For the last 5.5, or I would say 6 years, I have been doing RPA, specifically into UiPath.
And I hope that was an answer. Yeah. And do you have are you an RPA developer at the moment, or what do you do for a living?
Yeah, so I am working as a senior RPA developer with a bank.
Cool. In where are we in the world?
Yeah. So I am presently located in India, Uttarakhand. I'm working for, as of now, working for a senior RPA developer for NatWest, Royal Bank of Scotland, you can say.
Cool. Thank you, Mukesh. That was a little bit behind the person, Mukesh. If you want to know more, I can recommend go following his Instagram. He is sharing a lot of things about himself there. Mukesh, we have some more questions, but I think we'll go on with your presentation for now and keep the questions coming. I'll pass them on to Mukesh after the next couple of slides.
Okay, so that was more or less, Andrews, which I wanted to cover today, right? So there are other activities which you guys can refer. So there is something which is called Find Children, which I have talked. There is something which is called Anchor Base. There is something called Relative Selectors. So Anchor Base, Relative Selectors, you can always explore. These are the long topics. Maybe some other day, Andrews, we can again have a part 2 where we can explore those details, right?
Sure.
But relative selectors and everything, you can just go here. Anchors, you might know that you can create anchors from here. The good part about UI Explorer is this: you can always create anchors from here also. Set anchor element like this, right? So you can also do it from here. So let's say if I just want to indicate on the file, and I want to indicate the edit element as the anchor. So when do we use anchor? Whenever the element is not able to clearly identify. So I want to give a reference. So let's say I ask you, where does Mukesh live? Somebody says that okay, Mukesh live near to Andres, because Mukesh does not have a address, but somewhere he lives near to Andres house. So that's where I told that okay, I don't know where the file button is, but I know where is edit button. So I would say that okay, you anchor the edit button and then you click on the file. So how do I do that? I just point an element to the file. Okay, this is done. Now I say that indicate the anchor and say to edit. So now what is happening here? If you will see, notice that you have to just look for the edit button first, and then with the help of edit button, you find the file button. So that means I have created an anchor to the selector. So that is what anchor does, right? So yes, Anders, that was about anchor. It's an more topic. You can have more and more details. Again, videos would be available. You can refer to docs.uipath.com.
Sure.
And all these are available on detail on my channel as well. There is a complete selector playlist. You can refer there as well. But
For
yes,
sure.
we can have one more session.
Thank you, Mukesh. And Mukesh, I'm not sure how busy you are. We have like a handful or more questions. Do you have time to answer those, or are you in a rush?
No, I can take some and just, yeah.
Cool. Pritam says, "Hi Mukesh. Hi Pritam. Some websites won't give us href attribute instead of URL. It shows JavaScript. What is the reason, and how do we resolve this?"
Okay, so that entirely depends. Okay, so if there is a website which is not able to give you the selectors, you are not able to find the UI elements, right? Then there are other ways to automate it. The first way is to use the CV scope. The CV stand for the computer vision activities, which means that now instead of working on the selectors internal structure, you would be working on the CV. What does the CV do? It will take the screenshot of that application. It will send it to some server, that is UiPath as of now. If you are using the community edition, it will send to the CV server of UiPath. UiPath server will create a selector as per the screenshot and send it back, right? So CV is one option. If CV is not available, then you can definitely go for the image automation.
Cool. I think that was a great answer, Mukesh. I hope that answers it, Pritam. Shrikang says, how can we access this video later? It will be on this exact address, so you can just press refresh or press the same URL, and it will also be on the channel, so you can watch Mukesh after the session, or we watch this video. Harsh says, suppose in dropdown only two values, yes and no, so then how can we automate it? I think it must say.
Okay, so that is the same thing, Harsh. So you just have to use the find children, right? You would get all the children's here. Now you can iterate. Now, if you see here I am getting the values and getting stored printing in the message box. Now, if I don't want to print in the message box, I can use actually a select item. Okay, so UiPath has this activity which is called select item. Just pass the element here, which is nothing but this item. That's it. Now what would happen if I run this automation? It will keep selecting all the items one by one, right? So this item will go to the element here in the item. That's it. Right now, what would happen if I run this automation? It would actually go and select all those item one by one. So same thing, right? As of now, I was showing in dropped message box. You can actually go and use this one. I have closed that one. Otherwise, I could have run it. Yeah.
Cool. And Akshay says, thanks for such a clear understanding about selectors. Thank you, Akshay, and thank you, Mukesh. I'll pass on the thanks to him. So, and Aman says, thank much for the great explanation. Digendra says, how to get UI ARD certification, pass any recommendation and help. That will be a little bit beyond the scope of this video, but I'm sure you can watch a lot of Mukesh video about almost everything in UiPath, all the basic things, and that will be a great help. And then Ayit wants help to orchestrate and reframework. we will not explain that here in this session because that will simply be too much when we're talking selectors.
Yes.
But I'm sure we can make a future session about that. Then we actually promised Navia to get back to her question. And can you please address on the attributes that needs to be present and that needs to be avoided in general? Do you have any general tips for which attributes you like and which you definitely don't like, Mukesh?
Yeah. Okay. So for example, I'll just take example of Notepad because that is simpler. So one attribute which you should not use is the IDX. Okay, you can use anything, but you should not use IDX. Why? I'll tell you. Now, if you're looking for the stream, you would have noticed that these selectors are one another parent, child, and child, right? If I just remove one of the child and this child also, what happens? Okay, let me just add it. And if I just add the properties from here, you would see UiPath is adding numbers, which is called IDX. Now, what is this IDX? IDX is the index, which means that now instead of finding the elements with the help of these attributes, this is counting the number of indexes, which means that the counting the number of container. First container index 1, second container index 2 and something, right? Because you have removed all the attributes, it has placed IDX. So whenever you are creating a selector, make sure you do not have an IDX attribute here. How do you remove the IDX? You just add more properties to it, right? So let's say I just added a text file. If it is still saying this, I just go to here and I just add this one, right? And still the IDX is 1 because I want to tell it that you have to find it on the menu bar. Now still the IDX is 1. Go here and delete this. Click on validate. Okay, it's not valid because I think I just remove the here. So you just have to do it carefully. Click on validate. Yeah, it's working, right? I can click on highlight. Yes, that works, right? So the IDX is something which you should not have in the selector. You should not have the names as we have seen untitled 1, untitled 2. If you're working for file and folder, your file should not have some temporary timestamp. If that is what you want, you should have, but these should not. You should take care of the untitled notepad. IDX should not be there. And yes, the more layers you select here, it would be UiPath will take more time, right? Because it is finding first container, second container, third container. So don't add more and more. Only add the ones which are required, which is making the selector unique. I hope that answers.
That answers. And Sumeshwan says, "You're awesome. Thank you." We have more questions, but I think we are about to come to an end here. Mukesh answered a lot of some of them. We actually covered a bit earlier in the session about the hidden components on the site or in the application. And I want to say that Mukesh, it has been an absolutely pleasure. Even I learned something about the help when I could right click on the activities and get help if I wanted that. I didn't know that, so thank you. And thank you for being so generous with your time and coming and educating us about selectors. I just posted the link to your channel again in the chat. You can find Mukesh right there. So Mukesh, it's been a pleasure.
Yep.
I hope to see you soon.
Thank you, Anders. Yes. Thank you, Anders. Thank you everyone for joining. Have a good day.
Bye bye.